France folded in 1940 with more men under arms and more tanks than the Germans had because they lost their will to fight. My sense is our will's just fine. Oxford, it's a pleasure to be back here again, to be embarrassed in public and caught on camera. I've been here 3 times, only won once by a shade, and lost twice spectacularly. So I have no expectations of what the evening will bring. Charlie, who I notice has left. No, Charlie's still here. Who was the guy in the American show? Yeah. We did actually burn down a big chunk of the White House, as I recall. Yeah, one of our finest. In fact, there's only, I think, 22 nations in the world we haven't invaded. But, Charlie, I liked your pitch. It was dangerously good for the opposition. Yeah, but it was actually well said. Ashley, we're okay. I'm with you. What you need to concentrate on is not what we had or what we want, but what we have and what we need. And have we reached a start point? Very well and unsurprisingly articulated so clearly by my friend Richard. We have the start point. We had it 2008, we had it 2014, we had it emphatically in 2022, on the 24th of February. So we have a start point. Britain was not prepared in 1932. It did not wish to go again to war. But we were ready by 1938. You might say we haven't got the time. We don't know how much time we may or may not have, but we absolutely have the start point. Earlier on, I can't remember, who was it mentioned James Bond? It was well put. Alfred the Lord Tennyson, in his poem Ulysses, captures our predicament rather nicely. It was used by Dame Judi Dench in the film Skyfall. We are not now that force, that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven. That which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts made weak by time and fate, yet strong of will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And so on the one hand, life is this wonderful contradiction. On the one hand, the predicament made weak by time and fate, and that is exactly our lot at this time. But my optimism, which confirms why we are today still a nation fit to fight, is on the latter part, the will. We get confused by numbers. We see numbers as this sort of driving metric, and we've heard both sides talk about the numbers tonight as being all important. And mass does have, as Joseph Stalin said, a quantity has a quality all of its own. Although I sense to think that those in Sparta in 480 BC, while looking at the Persian army, were not so drawn by the numbers, but actually by their will and strength and determination within. The battlefield has changed. 80 years on this day, Major Tommy Lamb, with a company of Scottish soldiers, landed on the Normandy beaches. He was my father. His visual range of understanding what was going on, he understood the battle plan, but his visual range of the battle that was taking place, probably visual, as far as he could see in a confused set of circumstances. His influence on that battle space, 500 square yards. 303 rifles and Piat anti-tank weapons. Jump forward 40 years. Major Graeme Lamb, a younger version of myself, is in Germany. I have 132 Scottish soldiers. My visual range probably out to about 5 kilometers, maybe. My influence on the battle, we have self-loading rifles and we got the Carl Gustaf, maybe pushed to 1,000 square. That's it. Jump 20 years on. I could put 5 special forces into a place where they can see tens, if not hundreds of kilometers in real time. Their direct and indirect weapons can reach to the same range with accuracy. Those capabilities are available to a young major of a regular infantry company today. So don't count the people as being the absolute metric as to, in fact, what a fighting force is. Because a fighting force, our doctrine is quite clear, consists of 3 components. The physical, and we've talked about whether it's nuclear weapons, and the answer is take care. If you wish to, in fact, really prod the giant that has a nuclear weapon, too hard, too violently, or too aggressively. We looked at the equipment numbers we have, the physical, the means. You then have the conceptual. That's how you fight. We've always been good at this. We think outside the box. Wellington thought outside the square. He had his soldiers lie down so the French rounds went over their heads. Napoleon split the line. Radar allowed the few to win the Battle of Britain. Lots of courage there, don't get me wrong. Alan Turing at Bletchley Park probably shortened the war by 2 years. Oppenheimer and our part in that ended the war in Asia. Boney Fuller, Basil Littleheart, the Germans took their ideas and turned them into something which then defeated France in 1940. So our thinking of how to fight is not half bad. And then you have the last component, which is the moral, the will and the determination. Does it matter? Look at Daesh, ISIS, when they went through Iraq. Iraq forces sat at 350,000, give or take a yard or two. Now they were spread around a little bit, not all up in the north, but you're looking at large numbers. Opposition, 40,000, like a hot knife through butter. France folded in 1940 with more men under arms and more tanks than the Germans had because they lost their will to fight. My sense is our will's just fine.
What is your relation?
Sorry, you're assuming that my hearing's still good. My eyesight's fine, but my hearing's been shot a bit.
I was just curious because you're talking about. Shall I shout more? Alright. You were talking about the will of the people, and I was just curious. You think that yes, the examples you gave was I won't agree with that as well. But I think it's currently with like TikTok and social media, the public is not being able to be, I would say, manipulated by engaged. That's right. Yeah. Engaged by the government's the will of the government's aid or military, as easy as it used to be. On that side, you think that currently, if let's say UK were to have a military activity, that's going, yeah. just as an example.
Please ask the member to make his point.
Yes. So that's what, let's say UK were to attack Yemen tomorrow because of Houthis, they're taking out the cargo ships, which are actually happening, which is great. Do you think that the UK government will have the willpower to carry a continue this war, which will last more than 5-10 years, without actually having a backlash from the public, which will result with the collapse of government?
On Yemen, unlikely.
That's what it's about.
Please sit down.
On Yemen, unlikely. But if you had a clear and present danger, and we're beginning to see that as of 2022 and the events in Ukraine, the truth of the matter is, then the government would have the very reason that Richard pointed out. Why do you have an armed forces and what is the reason to fight? And you draw that together and you can start, because people have to choose to commit to that will and determination. You need a starting point, and the starting point is the armed forces we have today. I have no doubt whatsoever, having spent 38 years as Captain Jack Sparrow, and then the last period of time, every so often dropping in and seeing the young men and women, that we are anything other than well up for whatever is presented to this nation. Against this nation, our prosperity, our way of life, and our people. You could even pull old dogs like me and probably Richard out, and we would happily, in fact, finish our tea on the cooling bodies of our enemies. So the will and determination remains. What we have today is a start point. What we have is a force that allows us to grow, just as we did in the 30s, the gathering storm, to be prepared for that which we may be presented with, hopefully, and hope is never really a plan, that we have prepared sufficiently that we deter those who would otherwise bring chaos and ruin to you, your homes, your livelihood, and your families. But as to the Army, Air Force, Marines, and Navy being up for it, no question about it. Thank you.